celebrating Tere's short story by Joseph Duke. "Candace, what are you doing?" Nikki asked in an almost frightened tone. "What does it seem like I'm doing, you timid little rabbit?" Although Nikki disliked the name-calling, she risked more tongue-lashing from her friend when she insisted, "No, don't park the car here. It's the leader's spot. Move to another bay." "You're truly a church girl, Nikki, are you not? You're so obedient, so modest, but there's something you fail to realize." "What is it, Candace? What have I failed to realize?" "You've failed to realize that obedient and modest people become victims of life." "I completely disagree with you, Candace. There's nothing wrong with being obedient and modest. There's a sign clearly displayed on the wall. Move from the leader's space. There are lots of other available bays." "No, Nikki. Let's end the conversation now, or I'll make you walk home after church service, and you'll cease to become my best friend." "Please yourself, Candace. At least I warned you." "Courtney is the one you should warn, Nikki. Tell him to learn to be lowly like his master, Jesus Christ. Tell him to learn to use a loincloth and ride on a donkey." The two women got into the church hall and sat together. Candace's eyes were everywhere. She so unashamedly commented on some of the female congregants' shoes and dresses. Nikki felt revulsion for her friend's conduct. "Stop, Candace! We're in the house of God," she pleaded. "Leave me alone, Nikki. I haven't done anything bad," Candace said. Candace brought out her mobile phone and visited a female fashion designer's website. She checked out a variety of designer wares, much to Nikki's discomfort. "This is inappropriate, Candace. We're in the presence of God," Nikki pleaded. "Spare me the sermon, you hypocrite. I'm only looking for an outfit for next Sunday," Candace replied angrily. "But you have all the time to do that after the service." "No, I don't. There'll be 1,000,001 distractions, I bet you." Nikki decided to ignore her friend and opened her Bible rather. Her eyes fell on the first chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes, verses 2 to 8. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Candace was displeased. "You're always reading the Bible, as if your life depends on it." "Yes, my life depends on it, Candace, and that's the absolute truth." "Sometimes I wonder why we're best friends, Nikki. You know why? We're so different, so diametrically opposed to each other in our thoughts and ways." "That's the way you've always wanted it, Candace. You've never been interested in the things that interest me. And you've never been interested in the things that interest me, either. You've never been to a party with me, you've never joined me in my clothes shopping, and you never talk about men. Gosh, your life is one giant heap of boredom. Now listen. After the service, we're going clothes shopping. Are you coming with me or not? You might have to go all by yourself. I have a dozen chores waiting for me at home. Home chores every day. Don't you ever think of something else? Tell your parents to get a house help before they break your neck with their never-ending chores." "I'm not complaining, Candace, and don't complain on my behalf." "Fine. You'll have to walk home after the service and do your boring chores while I go clothes shopping and increase my chances of winning the Best Dressed Female Award for this year." "Good luck to you, Candace. May I ask you a question? Where is your Bible?" Candace glowered at Nikki. "Is it your business if I have a Bible or not? As my best friend, I should be concerned about your spiritual life." "Come on, Nikki. You know I don't have a spiritual life. So what's your problem?" Nikki stared at her best friend. "You said that with pride, Candace." "Yes, I did, and you know it's the truth. I don't have a spiritual life. Why then do you come to church every Sunday?" "You know the reason, Nikki. Don't pretend. You very well know that my sole aim of coming to church every Sunday is to win the Best Dressed Female of the Year award. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" How does that get you to heaven, Candace? If heaven is your sole focus and business, it isn't mine. The following Sunday, Candace's car was idling in front of Nikki's house as she waited for the latter to join her. Nikki emerged from her front door a few minutes later and got in the car, apologizing profusely for having made Candace to wait. "Listen, Nikki, I need to tell you this. If you keep behaving the way you do, I might have to terminate our friendship." "What do you mean, Candace? I don't understand," Nikki asked, alarmed and shocked. "You're so drab and dull in your appearance. It's like you don't have a life. Some grandmothers I know are a lot better than you in terms of dress sense." "But I'm not complaining, Candace, am I?" "No, you're not. But as your friend, I'm complaining on your behalf. You need to try and revamp your appearance. Tongues are wagging." Nikki stared fixedly at her friend for a few seconds. Then she said, "You seem to be so frightened about the human tongue. But it will never stop wagging, Candace, and that's the truth. It wagged against the prophets of God, the apostles of Jesus Christ, and even against Jesus Christ himself. The human tongue will keep wagging no matter what we do." "That may be true, but it's the least of my worries. If you don't do something about your image, I may have to relegate our friendship, and that's the truth." At the ministry's car park, Candace parked in the leader's space again, without being told off for violating the order and for being disrespectful. Candace was rather greeted warmly by the attendants and ushers, and tons of compliments were showered on her for her sophisticated dress sense. On the contrary, Nikki was ignored and made to feel like an unwanted member who had no business with the ministry. "I told you, didn't I?" Candace whispered to Nikki. "Everyone's attitude towards you spoke volumes of words you couldn't be bothered to hear." "You're correct, Candace. I became deaf to everyone's unspoken words. You know why? They're not the reason I'm here. God is." "You're mistaken, Nikki. Everyone thinks that God has abandoned you, and that's the reason you're so poorly dressed. Everyone thinks you're one great unfavored sinner that should be avoided at all costs." "Do you think so too, Candace?" "Yes, I do. I warned you repeatedly, didn't I?" The following Sunday, Candace failed to turn up at Nikki's place to take her to church, as she usually did. Nikki, disappointed and gloomy, rang Candace's number repeatedly without any luck. What was the matter? Half an hour later, Nikki tried to make contact with Candace again. There was still no response from the latter. Briskly, Nikki walked to the bus stop. Luckily, she saw a bus approaching from a distance. Her mood lifted somewhat. Candace saw her friend in the church hall and ignored her. An usher approached Candace just then and said, "Come with me, lady. I've got a seat for you in the front row." "Thank you very much," she said, and followed him. "Don't mention your dressing and beauty will enrich our video recording." At the end of the service, Candace walked straight past Nikki to her car and drove off without even looking back at Nikki, who was trailing behind her, trying to catch up with her. It was then that Nikki understood that she had been relegated, just as Candace had threatened to do to her. Some days later, Rachel, Candace's younger sister, calmly approached her and asked, "You haven't been talking about Nikki lately. Why?" "Because I don't want to keep talking about her," Candace replied casually and dismissively. But Rachel wasn't one to be fooled. The worried look on the girl's face was probing. Candace was amused by it. "Did you have a quarrel or something?" Rachel asked. "No, we didn't. But Nikki hasn't phoned you in days." "No, she hasn't." "Why not?" "How would I know?" "Call Nikki now, sis," Rachel pleaded. "No, I won't. Clearly something is wrong, Candace. Don't tell me otherwise." "Nothing is wrong. Nikki may be taking a break from seeing my face often. But you've been friends for years, and you've been seeing each other steadily all this time." "You're right, Rachel, but there comes a time when enough is enough and decisions have to be made." Barely a week later, Rachel stood at Nikki's front door. It was a surprise, tearful visit that the latter least expected. Nikki looked shaken and curious. "Is everything okay, Rachel?" she asked as she took the girl inside. "I should think so," Rachel replied. As an afterthought, she said, "No, I shouldn't think so. You should know that there's a strain in your relationship with Candace. True or false?" "True, Rachel. But it's beyond me, honestly speaking. I can't comprehend why your sister has chosen to be funny and strange to me. Why she's decided to distance herself from me. Have you tried to ask her? She wouldn't pick my calls. I must have turned a monster overnight. Candace is running away from me." Rachel promised to speak to Candace on Nikki's behalf. There was a look of doubt on Nikki's face, doubt that speaking to Candace could bear fruit. "Candace is a completely different person now," Nikki warned. "She might get frustrated and irritated and pick a fight with you, Rachel. Please, be careful." "I will be, Nikki. Don't worry about that." Thoughtfully, Rachel added, "I suspect someone might be beating the strange drum to which Candace is dancing. Things began to be different as soon as Candace bought the car." Nikki interrupted Rachel at this point by asking, "How did your sister purchase such a prestigious car in the first place? A brand new Lexus 450h must be beyond the means of a mere civil servant." "She took a loan from her bank," Rachel answered. "A needless, ostentatious loan." "It seems like Candace is competing with someone," Nikki said in a very concerned voice. "You're not wrong, Nikki. There's this culture of the best turned out and most affluent-looking person among the circle of friends she's aspiring to." Disappointedly, Nikki said, "I get it now. It's the reason Candace has relegated me. Don't you think so?" Rachel avoided the question. Nikki remarked, "It's a pity that many present-day church gatherings are drifting far, far away from sincerely worshiping and praising God and receiving His Word. Church attendance is now a facade for overt and covert rivalry and vainglory." "Please tell me the truth, Nikki. What did you do to my sister?" "Nothing, Rachel. I can't remember ever doing anything wrong to my friend. Why the question?" Nikki asked, needlessly. "Candace genuinely and murderously hates you. I think she's been demonized because she's fast becoming a hater of everything that's noble and righteous. Your firm Christian foundation irks my sister immensely, Nikki. Please, be careful of her." Rachel tearfully rose to go. Nikki hugged her. "Promise me you'll never abandon your Christian values for anything in the world." "With God's help, Nikki, I'll never abandon my Christian values for silver or gold or fame." They both cried together and kissed each other on the cheek. The awards presentation day arrived at last. Many members of the congregation arrived in rented, luxury cars and were dressed to impress, hoping to win an award. Snide comments were made in connection with those members who were not competitively dressed. Eventually, the ministry secretary got on the pulpit and announced the names of those who had been shortlisted. A rapturous applause arose from the congregation. When it died down, the secretary continued, "The winner of the best-dressed female this year." There was a prolonged pause. People were on the edges of their seats. Suddenly, the secretary dropped the name, Candace Alwell. There was a mixed reaction from the congregation. Some were clapping and applauding her, while others made disgruntled and disapproving noises. The latter group of congregants accused the awards committee of partiality and favoritism. Candace stepped, got out of her seat, and was ushered onto the pulpit. The secretary handed her the microphone to say a word of appreciation and encouragement to others. Thereafter, the secretary announced the amount Candace had won, £1,000 sterling. Candace received the check, curtsied, and went back to her front row seat. At the end of the service, the congregants flocked around Candace, cheering, congratulating, and taking pictures with her. Rachel was standing right next to Candace, proudly absorbing all the attention and compliments that were being showered on her sister. The sisters saw Nikki coming towards them. They both ignored her. Nikki, overcome by the pain of her rejection, began to cry and walked away, wiping her tear-filled eyes. The next day, Rachel was at Nikki's front door. When Nikki answered the door, she gazed at Rachel in a disapproving way. "May I come in, Nikki?" Rachel requested. "I don't know. I'm not sure about you anymore." "I'm sorry, Nikki. I know I betrayed you." "No, you didn't betray me." Nikki quickly corrected her. "You betrayed God. You joined the rest of the congregation in celebrating Tares." "How do you mean?" "The modern church has descended into the cesspit of nurturing and celebrating Tares." Rachel looked puzzled. "Don't worry, I'll explain," Nikki said. "Listen carefully, my little friend. How does being the best-dressed person in the church impact anyone's salvation?" Rachel was suddenly thoughtful. "Then," she said, "you're right, Nikki. I participated in a spiritually fruitless and vain exercise, but I've learnt my lesson. Please forgive me." She hugged her host tearfully and repentantly. The end.